Rob Norman. Give me a sec, Rob. I find my running sheet. I'd now like to welcome Rob Norman, Queensland Political Director from the Australian Christian Lobby. Good afternoon and thank you for being here. I noticed that you've been here for a little while, Rob, so this is probably not news to you. But again, I would like to talk, if you are going to quote anyone that's used swearing or offensive terms which are regarded as unparliamentary, the committee would be grateful if you could refrain from doing that. And if you're going to identify any person who may not be comfortable with being identified in a public space, if you could respect that intention, and the committee would be grateful for those two considerations. I invite you to make an opening statement during which, when you first speak, if you could announce your name and your title for the benefit of our good Hansard reporters. And after you make your 5-minute statement, the committee will have some questions for you.
Sure. I'm Rob Norman. I'm the Queensland Political Director for the Australian Christian Lobby. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for allowing me to present to this public hearing. The Australian Christian Lobby currently has around 250,000 supporters Australia-wide, almost 45,000 of whom are Queenslanders. We are one of the largest and most active grassroots political movements in Australia, and our mission is to bring truth into the public squares. This bill is based on a lie. It is a lie that men can become women and women can become men at the stroke of a pen. It is well established by science and society and broadly accepted by organisations such as the World Health Organisation and the European Institute for Gender Equality that sex refers to the biological and physiological characteristics that define humans as female or male. And gender refers to the social attributes and opportunities associated with being female or male. Birth certificates are historical documents that provide accurate, factual data, which provides documentary evidence of live births. If this bill is passed into law, birth certificates will no longer provide a truthful, static record of the facts of a child's live birth, but will become a dynamic document that is prone to ongoing changes based on subjective ideology. The Birth, Deaths and Marriages Bill of 2022 will essentially legalise the falsification of birth certificates. The negative consequences of this bill being passed into law are numerous and well documented by the approximately 175 submissions clearly opposed to it. In its published briefing paper, which responds to the submissions to this bill, the Department of Justice and Attorney General frequently uses the term cisgender when referring to natural males and females. This term is symptomatic of a paradigm that is informed by radical gender ideology rather than established social norms and science. Submissions made by various feminist groups clearly indicate Queensland women in particular are frustrated with a Minister for Women who minimises their well-being, safety and dignity. This bill has created allies that have little in common, but who are united in opposing it. One of my new friends is a self-described radical feminist who is rightly concerned about the loss of privacy, comfort, dignity, safety and rights of women. In her submission, she mentions concerns raised by her by mothers of teenage daughters who will no longer use public toilets unless they are accompanied by a trusted adult because they've experienced male sexual harassment in mixed-sex toilets. Stories like this, unfortunately, become commonplace and probably will never appear in official data. The bill has numerous negative consequences and few friends outside the trans lobby, but it is particularly dangerous for females both women and girls. The bill provides legally sanctioned opportunities for sexual predators to legally change their sex in order to gain access to female-only spaces, including public toilets, change rooms, women's shelters and prisons. This bill places women at a disadvantage and increases the danger of serious physical injury in high-contact sports, where physical strength and stamina are an advantage. The Birth, Deaths and Marriages Bill, Registration Bill of 2022, will allow this because it provides males with a legal avenue to falsify their birth records. What we see in this bill is the result of radical gender ideology rather than fact, science or objective truth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mr Norman, for your submission, both written and oral. I'm going to put to you the same question that I've put to various other witnesses during the course of this public hearing. I understand from your written submission that you're opposed to the notion of the bill changing the sex marker or people being able to apply to change sex on their birth certificate. Is there a way forward from the Christian lobby's perspective to still achieve the objectives of Part 5?
There may well be, and I don't think we would be opposed to another vehicle. Our opposition and our problem with this bill, I guess, is that it addresses the Birth, Deaths and Marriages Act. So it's speaking to birth certificates, which we believe and which are obviously a legal document. So the downside of that is that people have a legal right to go into a space that their sex should not really allow them to do that. So it creates, we believe that there are, and obviously by the number of submissions, there are many downsides to this bill.
May I ask a follow-up question, Chair?
Yeah, of course.
And so then to refer to the Tasmanian model, where the Tasmanian Law Reform Institute uses or recommended that sex and gender should be maintained as different, and they therefore use gender in there. They allow that the gender mark be the marker and be changed. Is that a model that the Christian lobby group is talking about when you say that you think that changing sex opens the pathway to some other legislative complications down the track?
Sure. So our problem is with the legal use of this.
Yeah.
It basically opens the way for legal challenges, not-for-profits, all kinds of organisations needing to defend themselves in a legal way. So we would not object to a gender certificate. We don't think that birth certificates are the place to do that. We're looking at a document that has historically been used as legal evidence of sex. So to introduce a new marker to that document is basically meaningless when that marker is in itself dynamic and prone to change. So every 12 months, my understanding is that marker can be changed.
And so then what about changing sex to gender? So in the birth certificate, taking sex out of it, seeing as sex is a legally defined term and has legal ramifications, and replacing that with the word gender, which is a societal construct, and essentially, and that's what the Tasmanian model does.
Sure,
What's
I
the
understand
Christian
that. Thank
lobby's
you.
perspective on that?
Yep. Again, that is a dynamic marker, so it is constantly prone to change depending on where the person is at, and we know that there are people detransitioning all the time, and so we would be opposed to anything that introduces a dynamic marker into that document.
Thank you.
Sandy?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rob. So just to move forward on that point a little bit, just for my clarity, literally the Australian Christian lobby, it's almost, even though there's a vast difference between the terminology and what sex means and what gender means, ultimately it's about the legalities and the spaces. So you spoke of women's only spaces, because even if we use the word gender or preferred gender or identity, ultimately it comes down to the physiology of genitalia. Would I be correct in saying that, or have I misread it?
No, I think that's correct. And our problem with that is that a person entering into a women's space who is a genetic male may then challenge the organisation, if it be a not-for-profit or whatever, the person who would perhaps challenge them on being in that space would then be in a legal, would be in a situation that is illegal.
And even though currently every day, I'm a female, I go into females' toilets, we obviously have many trans gender people who have the same characteristics as myself, utilising women's only spaces without an issue. Is it because it is formalised in a way that then could be contested in a legal angle by organisations who then say, well, no, you can't use this space, even though the question may never have been asked before, because we have many organisations that are women's only that probably right now have members that do have male genitalia and they're unaware of.
Yeah, that's right. So because it becomes a legal right at that point, it basically removes any argument or any right for that organisation to remove that person, based on the fact that there could well be a woman in a female space who is fearful of a particular other person being in there. So it's a very specific situation.
Yes. Thank you for that clarity. Thank you.
Jonty?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rob. Picking up on the member for Noosa's point and your comments around the legal ramifications, I guess I just want to get clear and make the point that that it's already in the Anti-Discrimination Act that you can't discriminate against a person in providing services based on gender and gender identity. So that's already a protected attribute. So I'm not sure how this bill actually I'm not sure. I don't understand your argument, because those issues, those provisions are already there and have been in place in Queensland for some time.
Yeah. So in the case where there is a perceived threat by a person in those spaces that is a trans person, my understanding is that there would still be the avenue at the moment to ask that person to leave.
So there would be, but that would be under a policy by that organisation in managing risk generally, not associated with gender.
So that policy now, if this Act is approved, would be severely challenged. There would be a legal right for the person to be there, whether the third party's perception of fear or threat is valid or not. Yeah.
That exists currently. There's nothing in this bill that will make that different to what the current environment is. I'll ask another question if I can. Have you engaged with Christian trans or Christian LGBTIQ members in the development of your submission?
No, we have not. No, we haven't.
Have you reflected on what your submission might?
Look, we're not anti-trans people. We believe that there needs to be care given to them and compassion. Our submission is based on the fact that when you introduce a lie into legislation, and there is a lie, sex is a scientific marker. Once you do that, there are all sorts of symptoms that flow from it. So that would be the core of our submission, that this Act actually introduces the ability to falsify records. Now, once you do that, there is opportunity for anyone that has criminal tendency to exploit that. And, that's how the criminal mind works. If there's a loophole, they will find it. So once you give people a legal right to change their sex, that will be exploited.
Do you see any benefits in what this bill is seeking to progress in terms of considering the needs and rights of your Christian trans, young people particularly?
Yeah, look, I think there are always benefits in exercising compassion when it comes to a minority group. The problem is when we create a bill that completely embraces one group to the exclusion of all others, then I think it's problematic. And by the way, there were, of the submissions, 175 of them were opposed to this bill. Now, in a state where there would be a House of Review, that would be a majority. So if we're looking at a very important role of committees, this committee has a grave responsibility, really, a very solemn responsibility of listening to the broader community and not basically creating a bill to cater for one minority group.
Thank you for your written submission and thank you for your attendance today. That brings to conclusion this part of the hearing. I'd now like